Awesome. Yeah, so we met through Nikhil's coaching program some months ago, and I think we connected first because I realized we hit on the same topics, a lot of the same topics and same interests, but from very different angles. So I wanted to connect. That was a couple months ago, and since then you've kind of blown up on YouTube, kind of, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Well, I mean, I saw you go from like 400 views a video to you have a few in the six figures, and it was like a pretty. I mean, first, how does that feel?
Man, it's crazy. At first, it was like, okay, this is cool because like this is the first video blowing up, right? I thought this is like my dream, everything I ever wanted. And then I remember when it happened, I didn't really feel anything, right? So in my head, I had the expectation to be like, wow, I finally arrived there. It should be like all good now. Just keep doing the same thing. But I actually got I got very depressed, man. That's the best way I can put it. And the reason I got depressed is because I felt like I had all these eyes looking at me, and I had like this standard I have to fulfill now with every single video. And I was just overthinking. I think I let the pressure get to me, and I think for like a week, I just really got myself down. And then that's when like that's when like Nikhil just said, "Yo, just stop overthinking. Just keep doing what you're doing, your process." And yeah, now I'm back to like my normal level.
Yeah, so was it that because I remember him saying that kind of thing before you had this big spike, and you including myself, and I've been making content for a long time. I've had some wins here and there, but even still, I'm like, man, if I was 10x on my views, that would be 10x on my income. It'd be 10x on everything. I can't imagine not feeling amazing about that. But then I watched you go from that to this, exactly what he said anyway. So I'm just curious, like, is it that your usual what wouldn't be good enough anymore because the bar immediately raised, or what do you think?
I think it's a cluster of a lot of different internal and external things. And I think if I wanted to pinpoint it for you, it'd probably be is that I was used to being so shit for a long time that when I actually did see some level of success, I had a fear of that success. So
Mm-hmm.
I feared what the success would come with. I feared if I would be able to maintain it. I feared if I would be able to show up every week. I feared if I'd be able to maintain the standard. I feared all these different new things because now I was being stretched into a new realm of this, journey. So I guess I let the fear get to me and I overthought about it and I just let it cripple me like my very being.
Mm. And how is it now? It's been a few months.
It's good now. I'm
Okay.
back to normal. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So when you hit 100K on a regular basis, that'll be the next. It'll be basically again. I mean, we spoke a little bit before, but I don't really know your story of how you became or how you got into this. Like, you mind sharing? Because it's only been like a year, right, since you started making videos, and I think maybe a little earlier since you started working on yourself.
Yeah, it's been a year since like I went into the self-improvement journey. I've been making videos on YouTube for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
So the first year on YouTube was, I believe it was 2021 in September. And that's when I took Ali Abdal's course. It was like the YouTubers, what was it called? YouTuber Part-Time Academy. And that's when promised myself, I saw this quote he said, which changed my life. He's like, if you post once a week for the next 2 years, he's like, I guarantee you your life will change. When he spoke those words in the first lecture, I don't know why, but I took that to heart and I made a resolve right there and then that that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna post once a week on YouTube no matter what. And I remember starting and I was so bad. Like I was really, really bad. Like compared to my other peers at the time, like it was atrocious the videos I used to make. So I started 1 year of making content on hospitality, anything like hotels, restaurant related type of content. And it was really bad content. No one wanted to watch it. There was not really a niche for that in the market at the time. And while I was doing that, I was working full time as a restaurant supervisor at a hotel because that was my career. That was like my whole life. I was identified as someone who was in the hospitality industry. I always wanted to climb the corporate ladder. And in my head, 10 to 15 years or 15 to 20 years, I wanted to be a GM of a hotel. That was my ultimate goal. And my channel would be like the secondary thing that would elevate myself as well, that I can just talk about that experience or document it. And then 1 year into it, like about 8 to 10 months into it, I had a breaking point at the hotel where basically I was just being treated like shit. And I noticed I was breaking my back for a company who didn't care about me. And I saw the dark side of hospitality and I actually resented it. like with all my heart. I resented the whole industry. So I wasn't getting any weekends off. I was working 6 days in a row. I was working 8 to 10 hours a day. Not for high pay, by the way. It's not the best pay. I was barely seeing my family, and then on my days off, I would just make content just to keep that once a week thing going on. So the breaking point I had was basically, just one day at work, it just like snapped where I wasn't getting treated right. Like the company treated me very poorly, and it made me snap and just go into bed for like 2 weeks. 'Cause I got a really bad flu, and I feel like because I was like so stressed mentally and physically, I got so sick in bed. It's like the worst sickness I think I've had. It was like a really bad flu for 2 weeks, and then that was the first time, man, that I just had time to think. Like I wasn't going on my phone. I wasn't like stimulating myself. I was just like staring at a wall, and I was just thinking. And the thought that kept coming in my head over and over again was, Issa, you need to get healthy, and you need to do whatever you can to take control back of your life and actually steer into the direction that you want to like go in. And the answer to me was to make content on what I truly like resonate with, which was philosophy, self improvement, masculinity, all that stuff. And that's when I started my 1 year that we're talking about now. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and so you were really out of shape. I mean, I've seen your before and after photos, so so it was kind of backwards than a lot of people, where like you're already making content, and then you almost like changed your life to support the content in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. I was like 30 pounds overweight, mental health all time low. And I just told myself, you know what, I'm just gonna go full in on this creation journey, and then just go part time at work.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about Islam, because you've mentioned it a little bit in your videos. I know you're Muslim. Religion has been something that I've come to appreciate more as I've become older. And I have a lot of touch points on it. Like I feel like Western culture is moving right now after many decades of moving left, and you see a lot more people interested in religion. You see a lot more Christian influencers who aren't being made fun of, Islamic life coaches. There's this kind of shift, and also masculinity kind of tends more towards conservatism, right? Like doing hard things is not exactly a liberal value. And even though I honestly am socially more liberal than anything, I'm curious what your thoughts are. And I don't even know what to ask because I know so little about Islam, but I just wanted to talk to you about it.
That's a great question, man. It's very hard to answer this question. But
I don't know if
basically,
I even asked you a question, but yeah, this time.
well, I was a born Muslim. Okay, so I was born into Islam, but I wasn't raised strict on Islam. So as a Lebanese, people call us like the liberal Muslims. It's funny, but it's not. Muslims don't like that when we say that, but it's true in a sense because you see a lot of Lebanese people. Some of them, they'll get tatted up, or they'll like some of them will drink, some of them will like do things that you're not really supposed to do in Islam, but they still follow like the basics of it, like the core pillars, right? So growing up as a Muslim, it taught me and instilled a lot of values that I hold still true to today. And it's actually where a lot of my conservative side and relationship uh, perspective comes from. And living in the West, man, I saw like how my environment was. I saw how people like all they like to do was drink on the weekends, or like hookup culture, all this stuff. And I saw how over time it degenerates people's soul. And I don't know if you relate to that. Have you grown up in a religious setting as well?
My mom's Catholic and my dad's Buddhist, so
Oh wow.
really nothing really stuck. And I grew up in a pretty liberal environment, so I was exposed to both religions, but it wasn't enforced on me, and I kind of dropped it as soon as I was old enough.
Okay, I see. And how has that like affected the way your childhood was brought up?
I mean, I grew up very atheist because, when you're really young and in Saturday Buddhist school, they're telling you one thing, and then Sunday school, they say the opposite. I was like, oh, all this is bullshit. And then, being in like a rationalist perspective, it's very easy to take an atheistic perspective and make fun of religious people. Because obviously those religions were created at a time they didn't know a lot about the world. So they had to make up stuff. And there's things that obviously we know are not true in old texts. But yeah, I mean, very recently, the last 10 years, I could say slowly, I've become more philosophically conservative. I think that's partly growing up, partly because culture has gone so far left. And I think partly also becoming a parent, that you just appreciate things like family and small community and autonomy. And then, of course, with the stuff on masculinity, which I think about more, it's just like, man, a lot of the issues for men are from a hyper liberalized society. Like, I still believe in a lot of the left values, but it's just too far.
Hmm. Has having a daughter changed your perspective on religion or spirituality in any way?
I mean, daughter specifically, I'm not sure, but it's like, well, one, in the abstract, without even going to the specifics, it's like, I can see how having like an unquestionable set of morals is useful, right? When I was younger, it was like, well, you need to question everything. There's great things in the Bible, there's great things in every religion, but like they didn't have everything figured out so many thousand years ago. There's all this new thing, there's new things, and but now I'm like, man, if you're thinking that everything is possible, it's kind of like the extreme woke agenda. Like if you think anything could be any gender, if you think anything, hyper postmodernism, then you're kind of lost in the soup. Even if you're trying really hard to have good values, it's like if anything is possible. And the other thing is also, I've been living outside the United States for many years. So all of my friends are expats who left the United States, Canada, whatever. And we all kind of have similar values, but we're all moving around.
Hmm.
And there's no, I can really appreciate like staying in your small town where everyone goes to the same church and everyone's on the same page. You don't have to question that anymore. It just takes away so much stress.
Yeah. Would you agree that having good values requires to have set boundaries and principles?
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
that's part of it. It's like, I can see, there's both extremes, right? Like if you're too hard, and I don't know, maybe you agree or disagree, but you look at like extreme theocracies, oppression ends up happening, right? Because when the rules are too tight, it doesn't leave space for people's freedom at some point, right? And someone's going to take power and blah, blah, blah. But on the other end, it's like, again, if you can do anything, then you don't have any guiding principles, right?
Mm.
If there's no exclusion, if there's no like line in the sand, then anything goes. And, I think it creates a kind of anxiety and kind of
Mm.
like spiritual malady if like anything goes. Like, I mean, I think we want some sort of rails around us, and it's actually more natural to have like, okay, this is my tribe, this is what we're into, these are the clothes we wear, as opposed to a free for all.
I think Ruwan, me and you are very similar in the sense that we try to take at least the good from everything we learn because that's how I was raised. My mom, she wasn't like a hardcore Muslim. My dad wasn't a hardcore Muslim, whatever that means, right? But like to your point of like, there's extreme and there's the other opposite. I don't think an extreme of anything is good. I don't think the opposite is good either. So my mom raised me in the sense of like thinking of for my own. And Stoicism is kind of a philosophy that aligns with that too, where you're in control of your thoughts and your actions. And then if you put your framework around that, I think you can take a lot of good from this world, whatever it would be. And they would actually agree with that too. They would say, they would actually look at the opposite schools like Epicureanism, and they'd actually, debate these people on the streets and actually have discussion, respect the other people, even though they have different values and beliefs in them, because they know that they can learn and acquire wisdom from anyone, no matter who it is. And I think it's a good mentality to have when you approach anything, because if you think you're the shit, it's like it's hard to learn, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, what you just said, because I've had a lot of debates with my friends on politics and stuff, and it is hard to tell who is right, especially everyone thinks they're right, including myself, obviously. Then I was thinking, like, what makes one thinker more moral, according to me, and it's actually being willing to hear the other side. And on both sides of the political spectrum, there's people who just won't listen to the other side, and that to me is evil. Like you're actually breaking people apart, as opposed to, okay, I think you're wrong, but I'll hear what you have to say because maybe you could change my mind.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that, man. And I see it growing up to it. Just it creates more division when you have a mindset like that, like, oh, I'm the right one, you're the wrong one, or vice versa. I guess I don't know. Do you think ego has something to do with it, or do you think people are just too tied to their like beliefs that if it were to get shattered in front of them, they would lose themselves?
Yeah, well, I think most people don't have the energy or brain power to like question things. Like it is kind of a luxury. And I was going to say, and I think I know more about the history of Islam than the actual principles of Islam. But like you look at Islam, it did start off through war, which I don't see that as a negative thing. I mean, it is what it is. Many things started. Every country started through
Hmm.
war. It's like it was a religion. So with military history, it's really interesting. maybe you're familiar already, but like the early Islamic army didn't use any of the battle tactics of the era. They didn't use any of the strategies. They didn't use modern weapons. They fought almost the way people fought in the Stone Age, where guys just lined up with their swords and they just like fought man to man, which was like unheard of in the 1000s, right? It was like, so it was already 1,000 years old or 2000. Like they were fighting like Stone Age men, but they won because they had this philosophy that they believed in so much. They gave them certain intangibles where they were able to be like far superior armies up until a point, up until they reached France, basically. But like, that's like, man, that's really fascinating by itself. It's like it equipped people, right? Because there's no way an atheistic army would have been able to do that. They just wouldn't have it, right? So that's interesting. And then I look at like modern MMA. All of my favorite MMA fighters are Muslim, and it's just like, and I hear about like Khabib training or like Islam Magomedov, and it's like I think they're hardcore. They are hardcore Muslims. They pray 5 times a day. They have certain, they fast for Ramadan even when a fight's coming up. Like they're super hardcore, and it's like that kind of discipline, whether it's right or wrong, just the fact that they're following something that tightly, it must give them something. Which I think is true for many religions, maybe different purposes. Like Buddhism early Buddhists didn't have to fight to create their religion. It depends on your environment, right? But yeah, that's one of the things that is most interesting to me, because even like, and I hope no one gets offended by this, but all the early religions are basically, you could imagine any like ancient prophet having a YouTube channel and sharing, honestly, I mean, it's a little bit of a silly comparison, but they were all just sharing their information at a time where you didn't have media. So like if someone came up with a good book, everyone spread it. Like how many books, if you were a Bedouin tribesman, you probably came across like 2 books in your life, and the Quran is one of them, and it's way better than another book. That's the book you keep reading, I know I may be oversimplifying things, but, I can see, all of these things are philosophies.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? I was gonna bring up the MMA fighters because I actually really look up to people like Khabib, and you made a great point. It's like Islam is just so disciplined by nature. If you're actually a true Muslim, that it's gonna translate to every domain of your life. And and I first know about Khabib when I saw Conor McGregor, on the verge to fight him, and seeing all the press conferences and how he like handled everything up until the fight. Uh, it just like showed me like, wow, like there's such stoic men like this, masculine people who are indebted to like Islam. And it's just so fascinating to me how like it gives them that power. It's as if like they're tapping into like a higher power in themselves, and they truly believe it's in them. I wouldn't say I feel the same type of higher power as they would, and I envy people who are actually very like religious, and like whether you're Christian, Judaism, like a Jew or a Muslim. Like I always envy people that are like, oh yeah, like this is the answer, and like I feel it. My grandma's like that, she's like she's been through a lot. She was like a she's like a war veteran. This woman, right? Like she raised 5 kids on her own. Her husband died on her while she was young, coming to Canada. They fought wars in Lebanon their whole lives. They were just poor in poverty. And she told me the one thing that got her through all of that hardship was like Allah and Islam. And that was such a beautiful thing to me, to know that like this like weak looking, old grandma can still be so strong internally and stand up for her family, and like everyone respects her for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, they say there's no atheists in foxholes. Like you got to draw on something when life is hard. But when life is easy, you have the luxury of not having beliefs, kind of. Yeah, so I've been, to your earlier question, I've been trying to find my own spirituality, honestly, since I appreciate it more. It's like I had a boss a long time ago who was Muslim, and he would take breaks 5 times a day to pray. And I thought that was cool, but I have no cultural tie to Islam. It would be kind of weird if I tried to do anything, honestly. But, that kind of thing, and honestly, I've been looking for it because I kind of feel culturalist, right? Like my parents are from different countries. They had different religions. I basically grew up without one. And now I want one, and I want something to pass on to my kids. But if I just make something up, I'd be a cult leader at best, right? And I've been going to, actually what you said about your grandma reminded me of, I've been going to these temazcals, which is like a Native American tradition. It's like they sing songs with like really, like in a really intense sauna. You might be familiar already. And one thing that I think is really cool, even though I don't know what the words they're saying is, is when the heat gets so hot, like it's so hot, like you want to crawl out of your skin, like you feel like you're dying. Everyone puts their head to the floor. Like
Wow.
everyone, it's like you can't not. It's just like, all right, the heat, like you are a higher power. I cannot do anything. You are better than me. Please, like, have mercy. And you just feels it's the like the most I've felt spiritual because it's just like shit. I'm bowing down to something better than me. Yeah, that's the closest I've gotten. I think to God without drugs.
Wow. So the closest you felt spiritually is when you put your head down.
Well, no, when I'm suffering so bad
Wow.
physically that I have to bow down. It's like I can't. Like my ego has to drop because I can't beat the heat.
I was just gonna say that whenever I do pray and I bow my head down, even during Ramadan, everyone like takes it, very serious. It's a very holy month. You like fast from pleasure, dopamine. You're not supposed to, like touch your girl like during the day. You're not supposed to like, do anything that really causes like an abundance of pleasure that month. And it's just like a spiritual month to connect to God, fast from food, and just yeah, connect more. And I find every time I do put my head down and pray, bro, it's like like just the motion of me putting my head down. It's like me admitting that there's this higher power greater than me, and it's the best practice I can say that eliminates my ego. Because in the world we live day to day, we do a lot for our ego. It's there to make us survive. It's there to make us have high status, make money, succeed. Provide for our families. All this, but the 1 month of the year when I actually just focus on God and making it higher than me, like something bigger than me, I feel like it's this beautiful feeling where my troubles kind of go away and my ego just gets destroyed that much. I don't really care about any other like mundane things. And I don't know why I can only get that feeling during that month. I haven't been able to rep or yeah, I get that during the year.
Do you think it's because everyone you're close to is also doing it?
For sure. That helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing about like an organized religion that's been existing for so long. It's like you just plug into it, as opposed to like me right now. I'm trying to like, well, I've actually thought like, what if I practice something like Ramadan? It doesn't have to be the same days, but what if I just spent a month fasting? It would just be good, right? Dopamine fasting. You can't,
Yeah.
like I've thought like, I should observe Shabbat every, do the Jewish thing every Friday. Why not spend time with family with no phones? Like that's just good for me, right? You can't argue against that. But it's hard. It's hard when you don't actually have, honestly, you don't have religious pressure. Like no one's going to be upset with me if I don't practice Shabbat. So it's like I don't do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
You know?
Not only that, man, you even miss like the positive side of it. Just being there with your family, your cousins, your mom, your grandma, and everyone's fasting together. It's a month that brings all your family together in one place, and you see them more often than you see people, bro, that you would never see during the year. You're more open hearted to like welcoming others. You eat together, you pray together. It's such a community built thing that strengthens your bond not only between your brothers and sisters, but just within yourself, like with your discipline. So that you made a good point. Like just being in that environment really helps you stay consistent with it.
Yeah. So actually, so one thing that I've been working through in myself is like, all right, so my 20s was all about freedom, right? I was actually trying to break free from everything we're talking about. Not that religion was imposed on me, but like norms. Like I did a lot of like exploring sexually and a lot of things that would be the opposite of this, right? And I've kind of cherished it as like something that was important to me. But one thing that's been a little bit difficult for me is like now that I'm a father, I don't want to, it's like a totally different world, right? They don't touch, and I don't think they should touch. Like and I want to be a good father. I'm not sure what my question is, but it is part of actually what has drawn me to religion. Of like, there are all of these things that I wouldn't have been allowed to do, let's say, if I was religious. But now my identity is different. I don't know what I'm exactly trying to say, but it's like it is kind of like this, honestly, a struggle I've been going through internally.
You know what's funny, man? A lot of people think they're free by being able to make whatever choices they want or doing whatever the f they want, bro. But they're actually the opposite of free, because in life, and I noticed this like in the last 2 years, no matter what you do, you're gonna end up worshiping something. So let's say you don't worship God or whatever a certain religion, you end up worshiping things that are way worse than that. So you see people worshiping rappers, you see people worshiping women, you see people worshiping drugs, And all these things are not going to help you be free. It's actually by being disciplined and putting all your faith into one thing is what makes you free. Because when you have the freedom of choice to make a decision and nothing has control over your mind and your actions, that's when you're truly free. It's like kind of like that boxer. I think his name was Brandon Carter. He went to prison and he was wrongfully convicted for like 3 year life sentence. Okay, he went to prison and he asked for the man in charge, the prison guard in charge, and he told the prison guard, "Listen, you can take away everything from me, but you will never take away my mind." And for the next 19 years, he spent every waking hour studying philosophy, history, and law. And he finally was able to prove his innocence after those 19 years. And when he was released, he didn't demand any apology from the court. He didn't demand any apology from the prison, nothing, not even any money, bro. He just wanted to, because to him, it would be like they'd taken away his freedom, something that he's always had in his mind. So to me, like hearing stories like that is like, that's true freedom when you have complete control over your mind.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Have you heard the book Shantaram? It's funny I brought this up with Nikhil randomly. Have you
No,
heard
I
that book?
haven't.
Okay, well, it opens. It's based on a true story. Guy, basically he goes to prison, and the opening line of that book is basically that. Like while he was being chained to the wall and beaten, he realized that he always has the freedom to love or hate, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's really inspiring. Those kinds of things. I don't know if I have the mental fortitude for that. But honestly, I have thought about like. Actually, I don't even know if this is true, but the idea of being in prison, obviously, is a lot of shit. But like to have like just that space to think and maybe study and maybe work out, which I guess is all you can do. There's something interesting about that. Yeah, because also having a child obviously takes away a lot of like real freedom, but it also takes away the what should I be doing right now, or what should I be working towards? It's like I don't have. It's like clear. It's like it's the closest thing to a religion where this is what I need to be doing, benefiting. It's like a binary thing, which I actually have enjoyed, even though there's a lot of things I would be doing for fun if I didn't have a kid.
Man, one of the craziest interviews is when Mike Tyson said he was at most peace in his life when he went to prison. And they were like, wait, what? Like, didn't you have like millions and millions of dollars before prison? He's like, yeah, and all I wanted to do was give it away because when you don't have your peace of mind, you want to pay anyone to just give that peace to you. And he never got it until he went to prison and just cut out all the bullshit.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think of Andrew Tate and his conversion
I'm not
to
trying to get
Islam?
canceled, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, we could mute it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Uh,
I'm kidding. Um, I like the fact that he speaks his mind and doesn't give a fuck about what anyone thinks about him. And to me, that takes a lot of courage to be able to do something like, because I personally can't do that right now because I'm trying to build something, right? So he doesn't give a shit about what anyone has to say about him. And I respect the fact that he has these values that he dies by. Obviously, to every like extreme, I don't think, everything he says is like completely right. But I think he does do a lot of good for men that are lost. And it's kind of cool to see his transition to Islam too, and how he came to that conclusion himself. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with him because it seems like it's very, seems like it's like a very, he's going through a lot of difficulty, with going to prison, and now like he has this case against him. So what do you think about him?
yeah, well, I think the fact that he became so popular is telling of culture, right? Because he was a YouTuber for a long time. Like he had that channel Tate Speech. It was like one of the earlier red pill channels, and he he wasn't that big. He was saying way more extreme things back then, maybe to get attention,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
because he didn't care. Now actually, I feel like he has actually become a lot more moderate because he knows that he has a lot more attention, maybe bigger stakes. But just the fact that he became popular, I think, is just says something that there was a hole in the culture that young men needed a certain kind of message. And then as far as the message itself, yeah, I agree. I think he, especially earlier on, was more divisive than necessary. But that was what a large group of men wanted to hear and needed to hear, perhaps. So
Mm.
I listened to his most recent thing on Patrick Bet Davis's podcast, and he sounds super reasonable. In fact, some of my super liberal friends who just never heard of him were like, wow, this Andrew Tate guy is really amazing. It's like, dude, if you heard his earlier stuff, you would have been like, you've been so outraged. I'm just trying to let
Yeah.
them know because they're like, But anyway, yeah, I think he's changing his image and he's been important. And ultimately, though, even though I don't agree with the way he says certain things, he does represent what I believe in too. And I think most men, maybe all men, so it's like you can't really argue, you can't fault that too much.
Yeah, one thing I take away from him is like you don't need to be in a good, I guess, mental space to do what your duty is as a man. Like he says, you can wake up sad, you can wake up tired, you can wake up angry, whatever it is. You can wake up happy. He's like, it doesn't matter. You need to do your work and duty as a man, and that's something that I've been like trying to cling on to more lately because I used to be very undisciplined, and now like because I've been going to the gym for like over a year now, like a year and 4 months now, I would say consistently. I've never missed a day. Even on those days that I'm like so exhausted, man, I'm just so like wired to go there, and I can relate to what he's saying. Like it's just like breathing. Like for a man to do his duty and work, it's just like breathing air.
What's your routine like?
Right now, it's kind of a bit different because I have a new like I'm working on a couple of things right now. So right now I wake up around like 8:30 a.m. And then right away I'll just go to the gym. Like it's not a negotiation. I don't try to like do things that would like distract me or procrastinate. After I come back from the,
So almost every day you go to the gym.
I go to the gym Monday to Friday, and then Saturday Sunday I take off. But I do a lot of cardio on like I play a lot of soccer, and I do volleyball on Sunday. So right now I'm very busy with like I play soccer like Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, sometimes Tuesday. Then I work out Monday to Friday. So I'm very active.
So you don't have like a real rest day.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just bringing it up because like on one of the calls, one of the recent calls, I brought up Mike Menser. Have you heard of him?
He rings a bell. Can you remind me?
He was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's
Oh yes.
competitors in the '70s, and his philosophy was opposite of Arnold. Like, don't go to the gym every day. Muscle grows when you rest. So like, go really hard one day a week.
Okay.
And anyway, I've just it's like a new thing for me, and I've been like I'm just curious about other people's routines because I used to follow the same thing. I was following like more like the kettlebell philosophy. Get
Mm.
as many reps in as possible. Don't trade till failure. Do it every day. Not necessarily, but now I'm actually training one day a week. So I was just curious about other people's. And I'm realizing, I mean, maybe I'm a little older than you too, but like rest days are so important. I feel like, and
Hmm.
I'm realizing now.
Well, technically, I do have rest days, but my rest days are just more of a recovery type of workout.
Hmm.
So right now I'm on Anatoly's program. I don't know if you heard of this guy.
Hmm.
Okay, Anatoly is this guy that like disguises himself as a cleaner, and he looks like
Oh no, no, I've seen him. I've
you
seen
seen
him.
him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm on his workout
yeah.
program, and his program is basically 3 times a week: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he rests on Tuesday and Thursday, and he gets you to do one ab workout a week. So technically, it's 4 times a week. Basically, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, instead of just resting completely, I'll go to the gym. I'll like swim. I'll do my stretches. I'll do like cardio. I just like to see my mind enter the gym because I guess I'm addicted to it. I just love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, well, I was going to bring that up is that the thing that's hard about me following this program now, even though I think it works for me because I also do jujitsu, uh, is that I love going to the gym. Actually, it's actually my favorite thing. It's like it's not a procrastination. It's actually I'll use the gym to procrastinate other stuff I should be doing at sometimes because I enjoy it so much. So it's been kind of a challenge, and like mentally, I see there's so much benefit of doing the same hard thing every day, but physiologically, maybe there's something else.
Yeah, you know what? The gym is also a way to get a W, which is like a win every single day, no matter what. It's a way to gain momentum for me. It's a way to start my day right. It's a way to get energy. So I feel like if I don't hit the gym, it sets me up for failure for the deep work sessions I actually need focus on. If that makes sense.
Totally. And then actually, I cut you off when you're telling me your full routine. So you come back from the gym, and then that's when you deep work.
Oh yeah, so I also intermittent fast. So I won't eat my first meal. I come back typically around 11 to 12, and I'll have my first meal, which is like high protein. Like I'll have like 80 grams of protein. That will either look like chicken and salad, or that will look like a protein pancake with a protein shake. And then I make my coffee. And then around 12 to 1 p.m., I do a good 2 to 3 hours of a deep work session designated to like a specific task that day. And then I'll take an hour break and then go back again 2 hours, take an hour break. And if I still have energy, I might push for one more hour.
Gotcha. So you work almost 8 hours a day.
Yeah, maybe 8 hours including the gym in my routine. But just deep work, I would say a good day would be like 5 to 6 hours.
Hmm. And is that typically YouTube focused? That's your main project, right?
Yeah, so 4 hours of that is towards content creation, YouTube, and then 2 hours of that is business backend.
Cool, man. Yeah, well, I think I've been inspired a lot by your videos. Also to bring like more enthusiasm to, which I think has been and so I think that should be awesome.
Man, you're gonna. I see your channel too, and you remind me a lot about myself when I used to create content too. And I know if you just keep putting in the reps, man, your channel will blow up as well. Like you're better than me when it comes to communication. You're probably a better writer than me. You're probably better at a lot of other technicalities as well. The only reason that I'm doing well right now is because I just never stopped for 2 years. So the consistency and the patience is the two things that like really bred like success for me. That's my two secrets. You don't have to have any technical talent. You don't have to like be better. Like you just have to be willing to work hard or work harder than people who are skipping or taking shortcuts in the content creation process.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. So what's next for you? Like, what are you working on next? What are you gonna be doing next?
That's a good question, man. So right now, my top three priorities or top two priorities other than my channel is my health in the gym. I'm trying to get like in the best shape of my life, which is like 12% body fat. But I just, like I told you recently, I just injured my back deadlifting. But it's crazy from week one to like week seven right now. I'm on the program, Anatoly's program. I increased my lifts by like a significant amount. Like I've never been able to do these lifts ever in my life. So this is like a really nice area that I'm like, just indulging in the gym. And then the other thing would be just the business back end, man. I'm putting a lot of time into just like understanding how the science of business, outbound systems, inbound systems, client acquisition, building like a one business, one product model rather than like multiple products or multiple businesses. So that takes a lot of time on its own and it requires you to cancel out a lot of the bullshit, man, to be successful in one thing. Like you see how hard just like YouTube is. So like for me to continue working on business, I still have to keep YouTube my channel as like the main thing and then while working on like my other skills like writing and all these other things that will help my business and the channel. So it's just kind of like a hard balance right now.
Hmm. Gotcha. Well, I wanted to ask you something else about relationships too, because you're 25, right? 26?
26, yeah.
26, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is what I was talking about with the freedom stuff. It's like when I was 26, I was doing what I think is more the normal narrative for men of like just trying to chase girls, like as many experiences as possible, whether it's ego driven or scarcity driven or just because you just want it and it's kind of natural as a young man. It doesn't, whatever it is. But it's interesting to me seeing a guy at that age maybe doing the opposite. I'm curious if you had any thoughts on that in your own experience, but also like I've seen in some of these channels like this kind of clash specifically with like with Fresh and Fit. I've seen comments and stuff like, "Oh, I'm a Muslim guy. Isn't it against the religion to be chasing pussy?" I'll believe the word pussy. But anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I think chasing pussy, bro, as you would say, is an endless hedonistic loop that will never satisfy you. And I don't know how I came to this conclusion because I never did it. Like I did chase girls, but I would never hook up with them like that. And I did have girls throw themselves at me in the past where like I had many opportunities to like sleep with many women, but I chose not to because I knew myself by rejecting these girls, I would actually build higher self esteem and self respect for myself to wait for the right girl to come along and respect her more. The more you just engage in sex, bro, and you just look at girls as objects, it's gonna really ruin your whole outlook on how to treat a woman. It's gonna really ruin out your outlook on like how you want men to treat your sister, how you want your daughter to be treated. So I believe if you wanna raise a good daughter, and if you wanna marry a good wife, you have to be a man that is willing to reject pussy because it's just pleasure at the end of the day. Just like any other drug or whatever, I think you should only have sex and come in a woman if your principles is to basically commit to her for the rest of your fucking life. That's how serious I am about this shit.
That is pretty intense. Yeah, no, but it's interesting. It's interesting hearing a very different perspective. Um, yeah, man. So, all right, if you were to redesign society for young men, like imagine yourself 6 years ago, like what you would need, what would you do? Because I mean, I think about, I've become interested in politics for the first time in my life because I'm just seeing how this society culture affects the individual. Um, yeah, curious your thoughts.
On how it redesign society.
Yeah, because like given that culture in the West is so whatever you want, there's people saying you need to be in a relationship. There's people saying you need to have all these experiences for both men and women, religion, not religion, freedom, not freedom.
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Honestly, I'm scared in having kids in the West. And I never really told anyone this. And the reason I'm scared is because what you just said, like, there's not really any strict values or boundaries. And like, if your kid is exposed, I actually read an article the other day. I think Chris Williamson mentioned it. He was like, your kids' life is actually not it's not mainly affected by the parents now. It's actually affected by their environment, by their teachers, by their peers, by their friends' parents, because you don't see your kids as much in the working world. So if I were to stay in the West and have kids here, I'd personally want them homeschooled, not by me, but like by a private, tutor or a teacher that would pay. My mom's actually a teacher, so my dream would be to have her teach my kids. But I'm actually very scared in having my kids raised in the West because I've seen people like even Muslims. I've seen a lot of hijabis. I've seen a lot of like really good guys that have really turned the other way and have ruined their lives because the environment just allows that. Like if when you come from a strict place, man, and you have all these different things and values, and then you come into a society where all of a sudden all these things that were considered like bad or like things that you should stay away with is now considered not necessarily like good but welcomed and actually pushed on you to try. All of a sudden you get curious. You like maybe I should try this drug. Maybe I should like hang out with this person. Maybe I should do this. But when like you said, when you expose yourself to so many different things, man, I think you just become lost and in the worst case scenarios deluded. And I think delusion can really fuck up your life if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's really such a trade-off because, one of the functions of culture is to get people to be on the same page and the same, which does mean cutting off certain individualism. As a younger man, I always saw that as a bad thing, that you're cutting off people's individualism, you're oppressing people in some way. But now the other side of it is you do need people. Like we're not actually individually isolated consumers. Like we need people. We need family that's on the same page. We need a community that's on the same page as us. Otherwise we're all scattered. We're all doing our own thing.
Mm,
You even need a strong culture to kind of like take away individualism for an army to fight together or for a nation to stay
exactly.
intact, which is actually the issue in the West, right? Everything's falling apart because everyone's doing a separate thing. People can't agree on like how children should be raised
Yeah.
or whatnot. I don't know if you saw the news story where Muslim families like were fighting against the LGBT
Yeah, I
stuff
saw
in
that.
schools. Yeah, and it's just really interesting culturally the way the lines are being redrawn because it is kind of a free for all.
Yeah, man. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone like what you said, man, all the greatest empires, they were grown on collective values. Everyone had like the same culture, everyone had the same value, everyone had the same principles. So to kind of and even the same religion. So to take that away and just say anything can go, it's like a war of ideas we're living in. And when there's a war of ideas, you don't know what to believe in anymore. So back in the day, before we had internet and before we had social media, before we had access to all this information, you were growing up on the information you were told by your parents, by your community, whatever it was, and that would actually make your community grow. It doesn't matter if it was right or wrong; it would just make your community grow and be closer together. Now, like we don't even know the names of our own neighbors, bro. I don't know if you experienced, but in Canada, like we don't even know like there's no really real sense of community here anymore. And I truly believe that's because people just don't know what to believe in anymore. People are just imagine having all these ideas, thrown at you. You're like, oh, what if this is the way? Or what if this is the way? It's like you become so lost, especially as a teenager or a child. You don't know what the difference is between this and this, or like what's right and wrong. It's like very hard to develop your brain and have a strong set of values and principles that you live by if you're just exposed to anything. You need to have a shield. You literally need to have like it's kind of like a mental shield. You're not gonna like open your fortress if you have like a castle to anyone that can enter and just ruin it from within.
Totally. Yeah, and that's why every empire had to control the information so tightly. Yeah, because like my dream now, or what I imagine for my descendants, my kids, my grandkids, whatever, is for us to have that defined culture. But again, I'd be starting from scratch.
Okay.
Like my focus, my goal right now is to buy like land, have a farm, have horses. All the family lives nearby. But ironically, I didn't do that with my family. I moved as soon as I could leave the country, basically. So yeah, anyway, it's a challenge. You think you'll stay in Canada?
I'm not sure, man. Every time I have a plan, it always gets changed 180. I think I'll stay in Canada because my family's here and I love my family to death. So probably. How about
Cool,
yourself?
man. I don't know. We were in Mexico. I don't know. Honestly, it's a big question for me. We're trying to find the perfect place to live, so I don't know if it exists. But my goal is to buy land and have horses and a farm. So
Oh
wherever
wow,
that's the most easily
that's a very
possible.
stoic life.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be. I mean, I was never super materialistic, but now I'm like, oh, now I want money because I want horses and a farm.
Yeah.
That's very clear. I never wanted a yacht. I never wanted sports cars.
Back in
Now
the
I want
day, like the
this.
poor people had horses. Now the rich people have horses.
Yeah, and so I was just talking to a friend who was just on the podcast. It's like you have to make a life. If you want to live a simple life where you just like tend your farm, like dig holes, you have to be rich first. Like, you can't. If you want to live like a poor, simple life, you need to make a lot of money, and then you can do it, which is so ridiculous. Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to ask you one more thing.
Hmm.
If down the line you see yourself, getting close to like a religion, and you see yourself like, okay, you want to like embody it, and like this is like you come to that conclusion. Would you relocate to a place that has that culture? Would that be like a solution for you?
It's hard to imagine really getting into a religion, honestly, even though I appreciate it more than ever now in concept, just because like I wouldn't have cultural ties to it. Like there'd be nothing, it'd be kind of random. But what we are looking for as a family is to be in a community that has like values. The issue, though, and I mentioned it earlier, is that since we've been living outside the United States with other expat families that also move around a lot, one of the issues is like even when we find people that really share our values, any of us might change countries in a couple of years. Like there's not like that. There's no blood ties, right? There's no real religion ties that would keep us somewhere. But in theory, yes, if I found a location where people really shared the values and were raising their kids the way I want them to be raised, yeah, that would be a big draw.
Okay,
We're thinking
cool.
about moving back to the States, and like it's like I don't know if I want to be the most conservative in a liberal town or the most liberal in a conservative town. Like this is
Mm,
something I'm playing with. Like I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of afraid that no matter where we go, we'd kind of not fit in. So I'm not sure.
mm. Cool, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fun talking with you. I learned a lot. A lot of great perspectives. Your channel will obviously we'll link it. Is there anything else coming up that you want to share for you?
Not that I can think of, but man, I just appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I was always connected to you whenever you joined the program,
Hmm.
and I really look forward to fatherhood. And you show me how like it's a whole other like chapter. So
For sure,
it's something to
man.
look forward to in the future.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.